Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third installment of Talia-thon. I'm not calling it the end of Talia-thon because we're going to talk about that at the end. But for the time being, for the Brown Sisters, this is the end of Talia-thon and the end of the Brown Sisters. And I feel like this week has been a little bittersweet because I was like, oh, I love Eve, but it's over.
No,
it's been a really nice binge series.
It was so much fun to marathon this series. It was so much fun to come and talk about it every week. And it's going to be so weird not talking about anything Brown Sister related next week.
Right.
It's going to feel like, oh, I'm missing something on my calendar. It's like,
well,
no,
it's funny because the book that I started after this is like the complete opposite. I started like a horror thriller type book.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So like coming out of like binge reading sweet, fluffy cinnamon roll romance to someone being murdered in chapter 1.
You mean the common, normal trajectory what reading would be?
Yeah, see, it's been weird.
No,
and then like Monday, I'm starting like a dark fantasy.
No, I'm definitely reading the new Kat Taylor book after this, so it's gonna go from like fluffy kind of like smut to straight PWP, no happily ever after. We're gonna be like, and then probably I think I have a YA fantasy I want to read after that. So complete 180.
Complete 180, right. So anyways, everybody knows who Becky is at this point. Oops, I didn't mean to do that.
I hope that you guys know me. If you don't, Becky.
But this is Becky from Coffee, Cocktails, and Books. Not coffee, books, and bullet journals.
We will get that wrong until
until the end of time.
But no, honestly, thank you for continuously having me on your channel. I feel like I'm on your channel more than my channel these days.
I'm just like slowly getting you back into like the swing of things before Veda.
Oh gosh, we'll talk about that. That's next month's problem.
That is in 2 weeks.
I know. I'm not ready for that because I have other things in August. And so for me, August is a fake time that does not exist.
Right. All right. Mitchell missed last week, but finished Act Your Age today. So did I.
Yay!
Excited for the live show. Margaret is also here. Hello,
Margaret.
And yeah, so we are going to be talking about Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and kind of concluding the whole series, talking about them as a whole. Now that we've kind of like marathoned the whole thing, and you kind of read it as like 3 installments of the same story.
Basically, yeah.
Margaret, it's in a couple of weeks, ma'am.
Veda's a thing we don't have to worry about till next week, okay?
Anyways, so I actually listened to this one on audiobook because I physically read it the first time because I had it as an ARC, and then I had gotten the audiobook through Libro FM, and it was I think it was the same narrator as Danny. I don't know.
All of them have had the same narrator.
Really? Okay. I feel like Chloe had a different narrator, but never mind.
I'm going to double check Hoopla, but I'm pretty sure all 3 of them
I could be very wrong because I physically read Chloe and Danny this time.
I audio booked all of them because physical reading is a thing of the past these days.
Fair enough. Well, then you would probably know more than I do.
Oh, no, you're right. It is a different narrator for Chloe, and then Danny and Eve had the same one.
That's what it was. But anyway, I really enjoyed the audiobook of it.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I feel like because Jacob is a little more like his delivery is a little different than the other love interest, so the audiobook helps so much with like that blunt, almost stilted delivery that adds to Jacob's charm. And I think that the narrator did such a good job of that nuance compared to Eve's very lively, boisterous personality, and it added such a fun level to the Grumpy Sunshine thing.
Yes, I think this book specifically. Now, like Talia Hibbert in general does an amazing job at the Grumpy Sunshine relationship, but in general, like this book is the poster child of Grumpy Sunshine relationship.
It is the best Grumpy Sunshine, because like this is such a different genre, so like bear with me for this comparison. But like another Grumpy Sunshine, which I know a lot of people hold to the standard, is the Will and Nico from the Percy Jackson ones. But the Grumpy Sunshine is not like it's like emo boy and jockey, like sunshiny boy. So it's like
Right.
that type of it. But this one is literal grump.
Grump and pure sunshine.
Exactly. And it works
Pure chaos.
so well with their characters. It works with the dynamic. It works. It adds to the humor. Like all of these books are
Hilarious.
so funny.
Yeah.
This one probably the funniest. I will argue that this was the funniest.
I think so too. I think that some of the dialogue is just very quippy and like I don't really know it's almost like I don't know, like this book I feel like reminds me of Gilmore Girls in a way. And I don't know if it's like the bed and breakfast thing and like
it might be that. It might be like a Lorelai Luke situation. I can see that.
Yeah, see that's what
I can see that.
Yeah. Just like except for like, Lorelai's not as much of a hot mess, but just like the vibes. And I feel like some of the dialogue kind of has that same vibe as well.
I can see that. Also because like they're British, there's this air of like proper that works with like, the whole like Connecticut Stars Hollow vibe too.
Right.
No, I think the other thing about it is we're gonna go into more, but because of Jacob's bluntness, a lot of the dialogue plays on that type of dry British blunt humor, which is my personal favorite type of humor. Like I rather read that type of humor than like almost like slapsticky or traditional rom-com humor.
Right,
this is my type of humor right here, and so it worked so well. And also the way that Eve was able to play into the jokes with Jacob, like at the interview, and then afterwards she like made the comment like would looking at my chest help? And he's like, what? Like, well, you looked at it. I was reading your shirt.
I love that.
Like, that type of stuff was so funny. It just really set the tone.
After I read this the first time, I had a friend of mine read it and who had said previously, she's like, I don't like romance. I've never found one that I really like. And so I was like, oh no, like I have to give you the Brown Sisters.
Yeah.
And after she read Chloe, she's like, okay, I like this. So I gave her the rest of them. And after she got Eve, then she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it was because she said my grandmother is British. And so like the humor was like exactly what her grandmother's humor was. And I was yes.
See, also, we're gonna get into this a little bit longer, but this one I think I connected to the most, which probably why it was my favorite. I am 26, Eve is 26. I have tried on a lot of different things trying to find like that niche. Eve is doing that. I'm currently living with my aunt due to reasons out of my own circumstance. Eve was just living with her family. Other parts we're going to get into later that I identify with Eve with. We both have purple hair. Like, so much with Eve, like, just connects so much. So, like, having that plus, like, the really witty, light, almost filterless humor just made this one just like, okay, I see you. Like, I have things that work and I connected to with these. With something about Eve, just like trifecta of everything.
Right. Margaret says that Chloe was also her romance gateway, which FYI, I introduced Margaret to Chloe also because I think I did it for like my old book club. We always had like a rotating guest because we wanted to have 4 hosts, so we always had a rotating one, and she was our rotating guest for that month in here that I am used to.
I think we talked about this last week with the Danny one, or we might have talked about this with Chloe, I don't remember, but how this is such a good gateway romance because it tricks yourself into thinking it's not a romance.
Right. Yeah.
Until those chapters, you're like, oh, just kidding. This is straight up porn at times. You're like, oh, that's correct. Enjoy. It's very well written.
Yes.
I feel like there is a spectrum of people who tell me they don't like romance. I'm like, okay, what have you tried? What have you liked about it?
And like, if all you have tried is 50 Shades of Grey, then let me introduce you to a plethora of other better books.
If all you've read is 50 Shades of Grey, let me introduce you to Katie Roberts. That's why.
Or just, romance in general.
Right? Like, if you have people that are like, oh, I don't like slice of life stuff, I don't like rom-coms, it's like, okay, well, genuinely give these a chance because they're a little bit both. Romance book club's another good gateway one, and spoiler alert's a good gateway one. It's like, what do you want? What don't you like? And because like I hate the idea of saying that like you need substance in your books. I feel this so like detrimental to the romance genre because of like the false stereotypes of it. But it's like, hypothetically though, like pretending that that's an argument that can fly for this conversation, these have so much more than the romance. Yes, Chloe is definitely more about the romance, but like Danny and Eve, the romance until it forms is such like a side part of the plot. Like, yeah, Chloe is like the romance is a bit more of it just because of the nature of this book. But for these two, especially Danny, the romance is such a back seat until like the last third of the book. They're like, oh, okay, this is a romance novel. JK.
Yeah, exactly. JK, yeah. Well, I think like romance in general gets a very bad rap because people that don't understand the genre or don't read a lot of the genre, they'll tend to say it's formulaic, which it is.
Yeah. It is, but it's
that's okay. Like it's okay. Well, first off,
fantasy,
there's a lot of books
is not
that are formulaic. Like fantasy books can also be formulaic.
Like, as if fantasy is not formulaic. Yeah. You're gonna read like Brandon Sanderson and then whine to me about like, and I love Brandon Sanderson. Mistborn is one of my all-time favorite books. Don't get me wrong, but like, you cannot read Mistborn and tell me it's not a formulaic story and then roast a romance novel.
Yeah,
you don't get to do that.
But then also there's such a comfort in the formula of romance in that you know how it's going to end and that's okay.
I don't remember whose tweet I was reading, but someone talked about how interesting it is for publishing because you would see other genres, normally fantasy, get panned for tropes, and yet romance is literally marketed on tropes, and it's so interesting to see. And then Katie Robert did a tweet the other day about how she likes the comfort of reading like romance as much as you can like look at the percentage and know exactly what's gonna happen. It's like, okay, we're about 70% through. This is when the breakup's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, especially like with the year that we've had, with the fact that like if you're going through stuff, like you said, there is a comfort to like it's light, it's fluffy, it's this. It's about
to get out of a slump.
Oh, it's fantastic. Anyone that talks about how they can't get out of reading slumps, and I'm like, have you tried romance? And like, I don't like romance. Like,
try it anyway.
Try romance. Okay. Or like short smut, depending on like your comfort level for reading. Because there's something about reading like a 75-page straight smut. You feel accomplished. You get it done in like an hour.
You get something checked off on your Goodreads goal.
It's fantastic. It's great.
Once you start doing that, same thing with like graphic novels. That's why I love
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're like, once I feel like I've like picked up some speed, then I can go jump back into my 500-page book. Okay, look, listen, Margaret. Amish romance was where it was at as a teen. I read so much Amish and like mail order bride romance, Christian romance as a kid. Like so much. I don't know why. It's funny because I cannot read historical romance now.
Also, as far as romance books goes, Talia Hibbert's books are more smutty than your traditional published romances, especially since these don't shelve as romance, they shelve as fiction.
Right, which we were talking about last week about how they get shelved as contemporary.
Like they're shelved as standard contemporary, they're shelved in the fiction aisle, not the romance aisle, and they're smuttier than Romance Book Club. This is on par, if not smuttier than Spoiler Alert. These are like some of the smuttier ones.
Yeah. So Mitchell says it reminds him of binge watching a favorite show. That's exactly. It's like when you go and rewatch The Office. You know what's gonna happen. You know exactly. But
or like 10 Things I Hate About You is my like movie go-to. And it's like I don't care that I know the entire story.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you feel comforted. And even though like, you know, there's obviously gonna be things that are different. Like in each one of these 3 books, there's something different. I did not feel bored finishing Eve, even though I had read Chloe and Danny in the last 2 weeks.
And one thing I think I like about the romance genre is because it's so formulaic, that means that your author needs to really commit to making well-written, well-defined characters. The plot, even though it's following a formula that we've seen, allows room for creativity. And so it allows an author's strengths to come through not from storytelling details, but from character, which in a romance, I do care about my characters more than my plot, because if I don't care about the characters, why do I care about their romance?
Oh, yeah.
And then also, if there's going to be a plot around it, it allows for a lot of creativity, like how we had the stuff with Danny, how it was like, she's working her PhD, he's working on the nonprofit, and it's like their meet cute is this like random freak testing thing. It's like it allows all of this stuff to really like create this fun like incident what happens, and like some of them are super far-fetched and some of them are like, no, I can totally buy that happen. That would have happened on my college campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course it will have a happy ending.
Unless exactly. And I love like, and there's sometimes where like there's enough garbage in this world. I just want to read about two people having good things happen to each other, regardless of what happens.
Well, and like you don't have that stress of like, there's always a third act breakup or a third act fight, whatever you want to call it, happen. But you know that that's not how it's going to end. So like, there's times I have anxiety reading books because I don't know what's going to happen to the character. When I'm reading a romance, I know what's going to happen at the end. So like I can get through that like bumpy patch.
No, exactly. And the other thing I think too is the fact of like, if their romance book has a sequel, it's unlikely the couple's gonna break up and there's gonna be some random love triangle in it. Unlike fantasy, I'm gonna pick on fantasy books for a second. It's like anytime there's a couple and then there's a second book, I'm like, oh crap, what's gonna happen to the couple I liked? Who's gonna turn into the worst? But like for romance books, it's like it's a side character, so the happy couple can still be a happy couple. Mm-hmm. It's an advancement of the relationship, so it goes from getting together to a progression, whether that's marriage or kids or whatever. But like you don't have to worry about like the, oh my gosh. Yes.
Exactly.
Probably the best part about romance books.
Right. Yeah. Because here's the thing: if I don't care about a character, like I'm DNFing the book very early on, so I don't like.
Yeah, like if I don't care about like I know like Bee-Tree was a super popular one for last year. For me, I never connected with our love interest. So no matter how well written it was, no matter how intriguing it was at most a 3-star read because I did not care about our couple.
Right. No, I had the same thing with Soulmate Equation. Like I just didn't care. I was like, I like the other relationships, like the family dynamics. I just didn't care about the main couple.
Please read The One by John Mars. I think you will like it so much more.
I'm going to. But anyways, Actor Age, Eve Brown. Let's talk about some themes before we talk about some spoilers.
After 18 minutes, that's a good idea.
There might be a few spoilers, but we're gonna try to like stay at just the theme level, and then we will dive into like the scenes. So this one, I think, like you were saying, you resonate with this one a lot because of certain aspects. This one, I think I resonated with the least because I am the oldest, not the youngest. And so, like, I think the first time I read this, like, I tweeted, this was the first book I read in 2021. And I think I tweeted, like, that day, I'm like, Eve is a hot mess. And I love her, but she is a hot mess.
So it's because it's funny. I'm the oldest. Like I have one younger sister, but Eve and I are the same age. Like we're both 26 right now. So it's like I had this thing of like I resonate with her on just like a where we are in life level and a few other things.
I resonated with Chloe in this book.
Yeah,
she was like, "Get your shit together."
I feel like, and as like trying to get my own shit together, I really resonate with Eve's like figuring it out. I also really resonate with her worries of I'm not good enough. Anything I attempt, if I get too attached to it, now that failure is gonna hurt more. So like pulling back, like without like going too much into like a life story situation. I've had a few opportunities since getting my degree that due to circumstances outside my control were literally ripped away at the last second at various levels of the process. And so it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do something completely unrelated to the degree I spent a ton of money on because I just cannot handle going through that again. And so when Eve was talking about that or like overreacting to the thing, like, you know, one thing goes wrong, it's like, well, this is done now, never mind, just kidding, this is done,
never mind, we're not going to shut everything down. No, I think like if I would have read this like probably 6 or 7 years ago, this would have been where I was at. that like I feel like I've like gotten over that hill maybe.
We're going to get into this in just a second, but I feel like these books do such a great job, especially marathoning them, of hitting to different aspects of where you are in life and giving you something. So like the fact that I'm at Eve's now, I'm pretty sure in 5 years if I reread Danny, I probably would resonate with that. And if I rewrite Chloe, I probably resonate with that. Like when I was in grad school, I probably would have really resonated with Danny's. And if I go back to grad school, I will probably resonate with that one all over again. And then I'm pretty sure like when I'm like on the other side of 30, I'll probably like start resonating with the Chloe side of stuff way more too. But yeah, I feel like there's like such a skill in her writing that she's able to capture so many unique experiences relating to where you are in life. Like I think that was really well done, and marathon them, especially getting to Eve's, I think really exemplified that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I loved seeing the cameos of the other 4 characters, like Red and Chloe and Zaph and Danny in this book.
Red gets marathoning. Red gets funnier every book. I swear. Like in his book, he was great, and every one of his cameos is somehow funnier than the last one.
Yes. But I love how both Zaph and Red have basically like adopted Eve as their little sister, and they're like, okay, we will protect you at all costs. Like obviously Jacob is a terrible person. We will go fight him.
I also really like how like the sisters always had such a strong bond from like the first chapter of Chloe. The sisters had such a strong bond, and it's great not only seeing that strong bond persist, but seeing how the love interests react to that strong bond, seeing how that strong bond helps the girls in different ways. When like Danny mentioned in Eve, it's like, how did you guys know? And Danny was like, I'm pretty sure you told me. That's how I do. Like you have all of this of it. You see how strong their relationship is and how important it is. And so their love interests are able to like they mention in their own books that they see and then they like this. So it's great to kind of see the follow-up on that they just like integrate themselves into that. It's so great to read.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's very stand out, well, I guess it's like Eve kind of singles out, that's not really mentioned in the first 2 books, is the autism rep.
Yes, I liked how Jacob brings it up, which is
like I didn't realize this is the first time, but reading it the second time, it is in the first time you meet him. He was like, oh, it's the autism.
Yeah. Acts weird. He apologizes and he's like, sorry, I'm autistic.
Right. Yeah.
This is just what you're going to get.
This is who it is. Yeah. And so I love that it was just like, this is who I am. This is what, this is a part of me. And now let's move on.
Oh, and I remember it was another part of the book. Eve mentions that like something that he does is okay. He starts to get defensive. He's like, of course it's okay. This is who I am. And she's like, I didn't mean it like that. I forgot the exact dialogue because I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't tab it. I meant to though. But there's a point where like he immediately gets defensive and Eve's like, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. And he like backpedals like, oh, you didn't. Okay.
It was something about the actually I'm going to
I think you know what part I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was though. Give me just a second because Christine is actually going to join us.
Oh, hi Christine.
I just sent her the link. I just saw that she can do it. Anyways, Crystal's here.
Hi.
Yeah, her newest genre she loves is Amish romance as you're reading in Stevie.
I love that.
I love that.
We love the balance.
We love, complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
No,
that would be an interesting video idea.
That would be really interesting.
Now that I've obviously read pure smut.
As you look for that quote, I just wanted to comment one thing on the autism rep is I was telling you this personally, and I'm okay with sharing this or whatnot. But a lot of my family is on the spectrum, and I mean both immediate and immediate extended, family, my parents, my sister, aunts, uncles, nephews, or whatnot. And I realized that I have actually just not been tested. So there's a lot of things that line up. So when the first time I read this back in March, Eve and Jacob were having the conversation, and I was like, I need to have this conversation with some of my family members. So I feel like I need to have this too. And so when she mentioned that she thinks that she is, and a lot of the things that Eve personally identify with are also things that I do, like noticing little small patterns about people, the hyperfixations, this type of stuff is also ways it manifests with me. I'm not trying to self-diagnose or anything, but it's
well, I think it's a conversation. And I've talked about this with hello, Christine.
Hey.
We're talking about the autism rep in Eve. And I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about this. But I think it's a valid conversation to have about self-diagnosis, and like it's okay to self-diagnose as long as you're okay with the fact that once you do get you seek therapy or whatever the next step is, that you're okay with changing your diagnosis.
Yeah, it's like, as someone with a psych background, we're warned really like carefully. It's like most of psychology is normal human behavior cranked up to an abnormal level. Right. So it's really easy to self-diagnose just reading basic symptoms. So like there's like the clinical side of like my training brain, which is like, don't self-diagnose. But the other side of my brain that's like, okay, but like your dad, your sister, your uncle on your mom's side, 2 of your uncles on your dad's side, your cousin, your nephew. Statistically, it's more common in eldest, and statistically, it will be weird if you didn't at this point. So it's like those 2 things simultaneously.
Well, my thought process is, and obviously, like my degree is not in psych, but like my thing is that I have been working with my brain for 30 plus years.
You know how it works?
I know how it works. And I know that like if somebody like, yes, I could probably read a list of symptoms of anything and say, yeah, I have that. But I know what my brain is like, and talking to a therapist for an hour is probably not going to give the same, like, is not going to have the same insight as me who's been dealing with it for 30 years.
I do like, I think though, I am self-aware enough to know when I'm like, I don't have everything. Like, there's some people that try to like diagnose themselves with everything. Or they hear that somebody has something, they're like, I have that too.
Or like, I don't want to like turn this into like this to imply the wrong thing, but like ADHD has recently become almost like a trendy diagnosis. I'm using a very, very like air quotey.
Sorry, which one?
ADHD.
Right.
So you have a lot of people, especially with quarantine, and they're noticing like lifestyle changes, pattern changes. More people are openly talking about ADHD, and a lot of people are like, do I have this? It's like, yes and no. It depends on what aspects are you looking at.
I think especially with ADHD, it happened because like it became big because like TikTok became really big, like, but I think it was like, because I had the same thing, like in the past probably 2 years, I've realized that I probably have ADHD. I haven't gotten tested for it yet, but it's a process. I have shitty insurance.
It costs a lot of money,
but it's so much money.
It's so expensive.
It costs $0 to get diagnosed with anxiety, and like $1,000 in Canada to get diagnosed with ADHD.
Well, and my insurance has a $3,000 deductible before they'll even start paying anything.
Same. You and probably have very similar insurance.
Yeah. It's bad. So like I have to rely on TikTok sometimes. But the thing is that I think that a lot of people, they started talking about like, okay, this person has been diagnosed, and these are what they do, like, some symptoms. And I think, like, for me specifically, I was like, wait, that's not normal? Everybody's not like that?
No, same. It's like, I know for me, the thing that kind of like takes me off both with, first of all, autism and ADHD are very comorbid. So like you have one is super common, have the other. I have hyperfixations. I have been hyperfixating literally since I was a kid. And they're more than just like, oh, you're a kid that's interested in something. I'm like, no, it becomes my entire personality. I almost got my mom arrested because of Alice in Wonderland. That's a story for a different day. Like, they become like really, really big deal things. And they're often on my diet.
I would know nothing about that. Obviously.
My diet is very akin to someone who is neurodivergent in the way that like I can eat literally the same food at the exact same time every day for like a year at a time and not get sick of it, which is very common for neurodivergence. The more I get in certain situations, the more I realize I'm terrible at reading people. Like in an academic setting, when school is very easy and predictable, it's like, oh, okay. But the second I get into certain social situations, it's like, I realized I'm not as good at this as I
thought I was. Yeah.
And there's a plethora.
Well, a lot of times you were a very talented kid.
Gifted burnout kid.
Yep. That's like a huge thing. And I was like, oh, me freaking out that I got an A- in high school.
Also, we know that a lot of the stuff has different presentations based off of biological gender. And so what we expect the thing to look like is usually a biological assigned male at birth presentation, as opposed, and those who are assigned female at birth actually have a very different presentation that science is only catching up with more recently.
Are you saying that the medical practice unfairly only tests on males and then doesn't study the female brain or body?
As unbelievable as it is, I've actually implied that. I am. I know. Unheard of.
Crazy.
Unheard of.
Right.
But,
So Margaret has a good point. Self-diagnosis can also help you get on the path to a more clinical diagnosis.
I definitely agree with that.
I definitely don't think you should end at self-diagnosis.
I concur. I feel like you should not end at self-diagnosis.
Clinical diagnosis. Let's go ahead.
I would say you should also be very careful of confirmation bias of, are you actually agreeing with something? Or are you twisting it because you want the thing? Where that's
Why
where
would anyone want autism or ADHD?
Again, because like I hate this term, but because they're trendy. Remember, like in the Tumblr era, when like depression and anxiety got kind of like sexy and glamorized for a while, so everyone wanted to have depression and anxiety. I feel like ADHD is slowly becoming that, unfortunately.
In the Ontario service dog community, every single person has PTSD and OCD.
Oh yeah.
And if you've met people or like are close to people who have like very real serious OCD and PTSD, you're like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just because you had a bad childhood does not mean you automatically have PTSD. Yeah. Like, come on, man.
What I'm worried about is that DID is going to start becoming trendy because I'm starting to see that on TikTok.
I'm going to keep that to myself because I have a very controversial opinion about that. I don't need to get into that on this. that is for the group chat at the group chat.
Anyways, the only thing that I want to point out before we move on past self-diagnosis versus clinical diagnosis is that clinical diagnosis can be very ableist and very classist.
Oh, I agree.
And that there's a lot of people that don't have access to proper therapy. Or proper medical care. And so self-diagnosis is the only thing that they have. And if you can self-diagnose and then you can start working on not necessarily treatments, because you can't get, like, you may not be able to get medication, but there are things that you can do to like limit symptoms and like stuff like that.
Oh no, I agree. 100%.
And that can help.
One area I've struggled with that is I've recently gone through the process of not being formally diagnosed because I can't be, but I've been working with a therapist testing for dissociative experiences. So not DID, but more like derealization.
Oh yeah.
And
that's intense. Derealization's the fucking worst.
It's fun. But when I talk to a psychiatrist, she's like, you can hold down a job. You seem pretty functional. I think you might just have a lot of baggage from your childhood. Like physically, like said to me, I think you just have a lot of baggage. And she was like, have you been sexually assaulted? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, it's probably just from that. And I was like,
yeah, maybe find a new therapist.
No. So my therapist is wonderful. That was a psychiatrist who you have to like, wait,
psychiatrists are so hard to come by, and not to disrespect the psychiatrist community, but they're some of the worst gatekeepers to mental health. Not to disrespect the community, but
I can't get that official diagnosis because she was like, you can work and speak normally. You're fucking fine. And I wasn't, right? So I can definitely see like if I hadn't taken that to a therapist, I mean, like, I'm really concerned. I don't want to like say I have anything specific, but I'm really concerned about this, and this symptom. And then she was like, here are 4 different tests you can take. Right. So and even though she can't give me like the formal psychiatric diagnosis for that, she can still help me get like build strategies and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly. Kind of like bring this back to Eve though. I did really like the conversation that Jacob had with Eve about like, hey, I might be crossing a boundary here. Yeah. But have you considered this? Yeah. I actually really like that because there is like this common belief that people like with similar types of neurodivergencies can kind of seek each other out, which I've also experienced. I have a lot of people with autism that like are easy to like notice it, like with me or whatnot. Like I was hanging out with a friend over the weekend and I let them know, and they're like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "You do?" It's like, well, I'm on the spectrum, and you and I get along way too well. So I'm like, oh, I thought that makes sense. It's like, honey, it's not your sister. I'm like,
but it's the same idea as like queer people finding each other naturally, right? Like you're gonna go to people who like understand you and aren't going to ostracize you for that part of yourself.
I also like the analogy that he used. Like, it feels like we're talking a different language. We're working on like a different wavelength, and I feel like that is like a really big part of neurodivergency versus neurotypicals, or it really is like a different wavelength, and having to actively break down the wavelength with someone who is divergent versus typical compared to like just two neurodivergents, kind of like having that bypassing. I really like that conversation was had because it's a very lived experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I lost my train of thought. I always do this. But no, I appreciated the fact that like it was very Talia Hibbert explains autism very well in the dialogue without like dumbing it down.
I agree. I think that
and it feels very natural.
Yes, and I also feel like it was very good to show that it wasn't a monolith. Yeah. Like, even like she has a character that suspects that they are on the spectrum and a character who's confirmed to be, and they acted so different. Yeah. And then when they also were like, and it was like when she was describing Jacob and she was venting about him, you mean that he sounds like Chloe? And it took her a second to be like, oh yeah, kind of like Chloe. Yeah, okay.
So how do we feel about that point where Eve kind of was like, oh, I feel like probably everyone in my family is a little bit autistic?
See, I liked it because there is such a strong genetic component. And also we saw it in Chloe's book without like Jacob being a character, Chloe's often mistaken for abrasive. Chloe's often misunderstood. Chloe does not communicate what she's thinking. She's like thinking everyone's interpreting this in a complete opposite way for other people. And it's very common genetic, and it makes sense that like the sisters get each other so much, but other people don't. I actually had zero issue with that because it makes sense. It's more common genetic. It's more common with the oldest going to the youngest. Not saying it can't skip, but the oldest is more likely to get it. So it makes sense that Chloe would. It also would be unlikely for Eve to have it and none of her family members to have it. Not saying it's impossible, but it's just less likely for that to happen. And also, she didn't go up to her family and say, you had this, you had this, you had this, but she was able to like, oh, this makes a lot of sense as to why all of this clicks as well as it does. And she even said, like, on page, this is the conversation for later, right, not for now. But I thought it worked really well. I actually really liked that was made, because also a very common lived experience. Like, if you have a name for something, then to recognize it around you, it's like, I wonder if that works for them too. And if so, like, she didn't give them that label, but she was able to be like, no, that makes sense why all of that worked.
I had a bit of a different experience with that.
For sure.
Because, I don't think it's like invalid. I don't think it's like wrong to say that any or all of them have or don't have it, right? Like, obviously, A, that's the author's decision. And B, like, I think for all the points you're saying, like, it makes a lot of sense. My reaction to this, and this is like my own issue, was every time, listen, my sister's downstairs. Every time I like get diagnosed with something or something, so I must have that too.
Okay.
Very invalidating. So I read that and I was like, fuck, not everyone has everything. And then I was like, okay, calm down. It makes a fuck ton of sense for Chloe.
Like, I definitely don't think that Danny has it.
No, I think that's
like, she's just an academic who has been told she's like too intense and too boring and like been there.
Right. Hence why I resonate with Danny.
No, I think that Chloe definitely does. And I think that you see in Chloe's book removed from it. I definitely agree with what you said about the fact of like, you can't have something that's yours, someone else. Like you disclose someone else is like, I have that too.
Well, I've gone through all the diagnostic processes and you were like, I've heard of today's the first time I'm hearing about this, and I think I have it.
I think one of the things I think worked is that Eve learned about it for herself and then was like, I wonder if she did, as opposed to Eve disclosing to Chloe, Chloe being like, you know what, now that you mentioned it, I think that's like, and I really like the fact that Eve did not disclose to her family because she knew for her having a label made her feel comfortable, but it wasn't a label she had to give to her family. She's like, you know what?
This is going to be mine for a little bit. Yeah.
Like I kind of like that too.
Well, and I also think I mean, here's how I read it, is that like Eve was trying to like learn about this neurodivergency. And so then as Jacob was saying, like, okay, these tend to be symptoms, she's just trying to connect dots at that point and just trying to say, like, oh, okay, Chloe does that, like Gigi does that. So, it's not necessarily that she's trying to diagnose somebody, but just trying to, like, maybe even just see a visualization. Because a lot of times you can't self-realize that, like, oh, I do that. But you can do, oh, Chloe does that. That makes, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like I read that sentence.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that one sentence, 3 people read it 3 different ways.
I think that one thing that's really good about that sentence too is that if someone does read this, or I know Margaret mentioned Helen Huang's books that also deal with autism representation, and if I'm not mistaken, they're both female protagonists that are dealing with it, which again tends to get underdiagnosed
and
compared
female
to
protagonists of color.
Yep.
Yeah,
so,
no, and also
women of color is definitely going to be something that gets missed, especially
like in
because,
psychology, they underdiagnose.
They're trying so hard to, like, meet that standard. How, like, they have to. Danny said that she has to work, twice as hard. So it's something that, like, she's just trying so hard to overcome. Maybe not Danny, but, like, Chloe maybe.
It's one of those things too. Also, like in even in my psych classes, in my psych classes, they warned us, hey, by the way, these are culturally specific. If you go to someone who is white and you ask them with depression, they're going to describe feelings of sadness and whatnot. If someone who is Black comes in, they're going to describe somatic symptoms, like I have a stomachache, I have a headache that doesn't go away, and that's purely because of how these 2 different groups are told to react to stuff. So, like, that level of cultural awareness is so important. And I think when it comes to neurodivergence, which doesn't always have those physical symptoms, it's so much more, like, expedited. And so, yeah, definitely, like, I love that Talia Hibbert included this stuff, because, like, I think that Brianna, you mentioned in one of the other live shows that she likes to put a little bit of herself into her different characters, and different parts show up in different places. I really love that she made a point to add the autism and neurodivergence into the book, because it's so important, and it's becoming more common, not because, like, anything changes, that people are finally able to put labels on stuff and have the ability to get that label added to them.
Well, and I think that the social media content, like the context of social media and being able to connect to different people from, like, different parts of the world that have the same symptoms or the same, like we were talking about with ADHD, like, we're all suddenly, like, aware of, like, wait, that's not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody doesn't do that.
I feel like that's one of the biggest benefits of, like you said, social media, the internet as a whole. And also, like, again, diversity is really important, but I know we're moving away from own voices because unfortunately that's been co-opted by people, but, like, why own voices is also so important, because the level of nuance that you get with own voices, the most well-read person trying their best that does not experience it would not have been able to get the nuance of that scene with Eve, going through it to get 3 different reactions from 3 different people, reading the same scene.
It was the same thing with Chloe with her chronic illness. Like,
yes,
Chloe Hibbert, like, has that, she actually has fibromyalgia, and so, like, she knows day to day what Chloe was feeling, and it shows in Chloe's character. And
that was so interesting to me, because I don't have fibromyalgia, but I do have chronic pain. I do have, like, I am disabled, so it was, like, really interesting to be like, okay, well, like, I don't get what it feels like to feel like this, but I do get so much of what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love having the nuance in there, because then you can also have a character like Red, or like, who doesn't have it, or Zaf, who has something different, or Jacob, who does have it and is the one introducing it. And you get this, like, really interesting level of nuances with the characters. So, like, how Red can notice when Chloe's in more pain than not, and Chloe's like, how do you even notice? And Red's like, how do people not notice this? It's obvious. And then you have Jacob, who notices, like, I know I might be crossing a line here, but have you looked into this? And because I can recognize these shared illnesses, like, I think it's so interesting. And then, like, you have, like, Zaf with his anxiety. Like, I have really super bad anxiety too. Like, mine doesn't go full on to, like, I feel like people are harmed, but it definitely, the spiraling that he does, like, an offhanded comment leads to, like, silent spiraling suffering, or, like, the way that he had the anxiety attack that kind of snuck out of nowhere. instantly recognized the symptoms, instantly knew what to do.
Right.
All of that is just like this level of nuance. If you've never experienced it, like you can be like, try your best to describe it, but it's so clear that Hibbert at least has some level of experience with all of these things and was able to write it authentically with the nuance it needed, but also having the external experiences on it be just as accurate as like the character that was experiencing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in an interview, Talia said that she resonates most with Eve, which I think was like kind of cool to like be able to, I don't know, like see like Talia's brain a little bit.
I was
as you
so
were-
expecting to not like Eve. I went into that like little sisters suck. And
Yes.
We were talking about this when we rewrite Chloe. Is like the first time you read Chloe, Eve is like fine, but you don't love her that much, and like a little annoying at times. And then after you read Eve, and then you reread Chloe, you're like, oh, you're the cutest. I love you.
Yeah.
She is, and I think I was expecting her to be like, based on the title, like Act Your Age. I was expecting her to be like childish and bratty.
Yes.
She's just like freaking dissociated, and they're like, la la la. Oh shit, I fucked up because I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, I get that.
I get
No,
that,
also
yeah.
like.
No,
No,
and the thing is that like by the end of the book, she is very mature. Like the fact, the way that she handled the third act breakup, I don't love Eve's third act breakup as far as like the way that it went. It was very repetitive of Chloe. It was very much the Chloe. It was very much the family got involved and there was a miscommunication.
See, the thing I think I dislike about Eve's third act breakup is not just like it was miscommunication, not just that the family got involved, but it felt unearned compared to like Chloe's, for example. Like Chloe's played in Red's fear that we just had a conversation about. Red's like worry that like he's not good enough for her, then overhearing, and then Chloe, when she tries to explain it, doesn't fully do it and he kind of goes up. Eve's with the fact of she straight up did not get a chance to tell Jacob about this job. Also, the job felt so almost forced. This is my issue with the first time I read it, but like the catalyst of like the September job and her just being there and whatnot felt very forced. It's the only time it felt forced, like something felt forced in these books. If like, oh crap, this is what's going to cause the third.
Trying to put in
you could tell the minute it was written, you could just tell.
And it wasn't
that's going to be the third act conflict.
It's like, oh crap.
However, post that conflict, her conversation with her family,
fantastic,
so beautiful. I'm like, I don't even have the balls to do that with my family. So like, way to go, E.
No, and it was such a great example of setting a clear boundary, especially with like the fight that caused her to run in the first place. Her being self-aware enough to be like, they just told me I need to grow up, so I ran away like a 4-year-old. What is wrong with me?
Right. Well, I think it really showed a character arc because at the beginning they have a fight and she does the complete opposite and just runs. So by the last, like the end, when they have this fight and she's like, no, like this is where I'm standing. This is what is going on. And you guys need to butt out.
If I did not like Eve and Jacob and did not laugh so much leading up to that conflict, I probably would have instantly disliked the book because of how forced it felt. But there was so much good around it between Jacob and Eve are genuinely a very likable couple. They're absolutely hilarious. I love them so much. Like you said, the conversation she had with her family, the very clear, articulate boundary setting and holding her family accountable, and her family being receptive to that conversation.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
They're the ideal family.
Oh, they all really are. And then also objectively,
can I be adopted as a Brown?
Yeah, can I be part of that?
Also, objectively, the comment of "Honey, we thought you were indoctrinated into a sex cult" was objectively funny.
Oh, I loved it.
That was objectively hilarious.
I really did like how in all three of them, because I've only been on this live show, so I'm just going to talk about all three books.
Go for it.
We're
going to be wrapping up all three together tonight anyways, so.
None of the third act conflicts were shitty. Like usually in romances, one of them's a shitty person.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's usually the guy and he does something shitty, or it's usually the girl and she does something super fucking flaky.
Or like the one time they cannot talk is the third act breakup. Like they're like Brianna and I were talking about this, I think with the Chloe one, is that like they're in constant communication, the third act breakup, and no one has a cell phone anymore.
Yeah. But I do feel like in all of these, no one was a bad person. They were just all acting out of like their own trauma or their own insecurity.
Yes.
And I was like, these feel like really real, like
I could actually see this happening in real life.
And it didn't make me hate. I always end up like the third act conflict, because I'm such a grudge holder and such a like cancel him, he's done, never dated.
I hate second chance romances because I'm like, dude, he cheated on you. Why are you going back to him?
Right. But nobody actually, they fucked up, sure. Like Red definitely, and I've been there because I have really volatile panic attacks, definitely fucked up, right? Yeah. But like, I get it because his insecurities were just, and it felt real.
To date, the one with Red and Chloe is my favorite third act breakup to date for two reasons. One, it was both of them, they acted exactly how a person in a situation would. And then Red, that door is closed for maybe 3 seconds. He's like, oh,
shit. Yeah. Which is that's what a panic attack is like, right? You don't leave a panic attack being like, I was morally justified. You're like, I couldn't control what I was doing there. I was just freaking fucking out.
But also, like, he never once said, like, there was nothing in his, I did this, you need to forgive me. It was, Chloe, Button, I am so sorry. And she was like, you need to go.
And like, Zaf, too. Zaf being like, oh, shit, I pressured her so quickly. Like, she said baby steps, and I
hit her with the I love you.
I was like, well, what have I done? So even though she was kind of like the flakier one there, he was immediately like, I really did not play my cards right. And
I love the amount of emotional maturity and emotional health these characters have, because I think that's one thing we were kind of touching on this before, that romances for some reason still, even in this day, romanticize this level of emotional immaturity and this level of, I need to grow up because I'm with you. But these are characters that are well adjusted. All of them, every single one of the characters are willing to have like emotional conversations. She makes a point that all of the men have to get emotional with their guy friends, with people in their life. And you see this level of vulnerability that leads to the believability that like when they like screw
the
up.
Times that I accepted heterosexuality. It was like, okay, I was like, okay, things were good.
Right.
And I think
not excluding Danny, but like obviously we loved her from the beginning. But I was like, okay, these men are allowed.
These men are allowed.
I think like,
I read a romance after it, and literally the whole, like right after, like I started it, I think the day I finished Eve Brown, which was definitely a mistake. And Brianna, you warned me about this because I was in such a romance high after that. And then she was like,
I gave you the link to another Talia Hibbert.
But it was like on my script, and I was like, press play. And it was like, she's like, should I move to London or should I move to Seattle and be with a guy I really like? Because in the past I've dated people who were disappointing, so maybe I should never love again. And it was such
get over yourself.
But it was like she was having some of the same issues as Danny, but with absolutely no nuance or logic, or like Danny, like you could see where it was like lived experience combined with like anxiety and like real fear and stuff. And this girl was like super hot, super successful. And she's like, but life is hard, so romance should be dead. And I was like,
I think the last 5 romances that I have read in the past 3 weeks have been the Brown Sisters, the male romance from Talia Hibbert, and then the soulmate equation from Christina Lauren.
So now I understand why you hate soulmate equation as much as you did.
Had I not read 4 Talia Hibbert books surrounding that book, I don't think that the soulmate equation would have been as bad as it was. Because I was reading reviews from people that I have very similar like ratings to, and they were like, this is the best Christina Lauren book that I've read since the Unhoneymooners.
Okay, when you go that far.
I know, right? That one was my favorite, and I was like, okay, that's I had high hopes going into this, but like because of how great Talia Hibbert is and how like she could put this nuance in, and how the side characters are so amazing, and the relationships and the dialogue and everything is just so funny and just perfection. You read this and you're just like, meh.
I feel like
Yeah, that was the same thing. Okay, so this is the like Written in the Stars one by Alexandria Belfleur,
I
and
just got
okay.
that one.
but it's in a sequel. So the first one I really liked. I read it and I really liked the first one.
Okay.
And then I read
That's the queer
Brown
one, right?
books.
That's the sapphic
The first
one.
one's the queer one. The second one, she's like, I'm bisexual, and then it never comes up. No. What does she say? Because it was listed as a queer Own Voices romance, the sequel too, but it's like the most heterosexual thing I've ever read. But she's like, yes, I have. She's like, I'm very good at cunnilingus, and then at one point, she and another character say "by 5," and I'm like,
I hate everything about that.
Everything about that.
I was like, the first one was really gay and really great. Like, you didn't have to lie about this one, but like, so I read the first one, then I read all 3 Brown Sisters, and then I read the sequel, and I was like, even though I really liked the first one, and genuinely, I just do think the first one's like just better in general, but I was like, I'm gonna need every male lead to be written by Talia Hibbert from
Seriously.
now on.
Well, so this is like Becky and I were talking about this at the beginning. I like have completely switched gears and I'm reading like dark horror thriller type thing now to like, cleanse my palate. Because I need to get off of the Talia Hibbert train for a little bit.
It was a hate crime. It was a hate crime. I literally hate when your queer representation is just like saying a character is bisexual. Yeah. They're like, yeah, she's bisexual, but she's never going to display any like that's not
it reminds me of like those TikToks that are really popular during Pride. Like, hey queen, where's Sasha Air Wade a new deal? So it's like that's what that sounds like.
Yeah, it's very like wow, like the WestJet logo changed. WestJet. Do you guys know what WestJet is, or is that's just Canada, right?
I think it's just Canada. I have no clue what it is.
Okay, but you know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like, and the author is queer, so it's not like she's. I was just like, you could. I don't know, because the first one it was like.
Well, I mean, it's perfectly valid to have a bisexual character in a straight relationship. And they're still queer.
I'm a bisexual character.
Well, I mean, that's
a heterosexual character.
Right.
And I mean,
you're a character.
There's too many heterosexual people under my roof right now. I'm vastly outnumbered, and it's terrible.
But like, that's Danny's story. And I think Talia does that so well because she brings up, old relationships and like the fact that even though she's with a straight man, she's still bisexual.
And she just like everything about Danny is like a queer woman, not just necessarily a pansexual or bisexual. Like she's just like a queer woman. This is like a blonde woman, like who that's in human resources, and like they go to Disney World in the end. I'm like, you're so
that feels straight.
It's gross.
Okay, but can we talk about the fact that Gigi is pan? Because
yes, I love that was on Paige's pan, and especially
because honestly, let's be honest, Gigi needs her own book. Can we have a Gigi book?
I want either a Gigi prequel story or a life up to this point of her Gigi.
Yes.
I want, but like I'll take anything. Like if she's like, I plan to release 17 more books in this universe, I'll be like, cool, pre-order.
Okay.
Yeah. Was it in Danny's story that we were talking about how Gigi? I at least like I feel like Gigi is Evelyn Hugo if Evelyn didn't get famous.
Yes. No, that's what we were talking about during the game. It's like
just the way that she emanates and like has this like just her vibe is very Evelyn.
We were talking that Gigi and Evelyn in the same room would hate each other because of how similar they are, but everyone would be like, we're literally identical, so we love you equally.
But you could get married and it would go great.
But they would hate each other because of how similar they are.
It's true.
But maybe it would be a hate to love romance.
Okay, so just fan cast that and write like the same premise, but their names are just like Fifi and Beverly.
Like especially if they got together like in their 60s. I mean, like, come on.
That would be so cute. Like a late in life romance. That would be so cute.
Just like two
Christine, there's your next NaNoWriMo
actresses.
There's your NaNoWriMo novel.
That's so
NaNoWriMo novel right now is actually fucked, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. Not on the list.
Not on the list.
No.
So anyways, is there anything else that we want to talk about? Eve, I just hit myself in the face with this book.
Yes.
Before we start ranking our favorites of the characters.
The fact that Eve called out the Spock joke is art.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that we finally, because like we tell people to do that, like IRL, like hold people accountable. These jokes are funny. So watching Eve use the go-to technique of, I'm sorry, why is that funny? Can you explain it to me? No, I
I
understand.
understand who Spock is.
Like, no, I know who Spock is. Why is that funny?
Yeah.
Why I loved that part so much. It's great because also like the go-to of like. Also, let's just say, the smut in this book I think took on a slightly sexier level than the other two.
No,
Way better. Way
So,
better.
yeah.
Not one glistening penis head was described.
The Jacob licking the toy, that entire
The sex
paragraph,
twin scene, that
that
was
was
it.
one of my favorite scenes.
I
He was
love
like,
that scene.
he was like, I'm just gonna pleasure you and play around with this. And I was like, yes.
Yes.
Also, I really like the
I'm a
one where she went to the bar and like she was very like, I don't need him to worry about consent. I don't need him to worry about boundary. I don't need him to worry about any of this.
Yeah.
So I am going to be so aware. So anything that he thinks is like possibly crossing a line, it's like, nope.
I know.
Well, I think that's
love
also
that.
understanding his brain.
Yes.
And that's like her being a good partner and
No,
understanding that like, hey, like if I have a drink, then like he may construe this as X, Y, and Z, but I want this.
And that's also just smart for her too, to be like, I should go into this sober. Like I should be able to say that when I'm saying this, I'm sober. Like,
Right.
I love that. I also really there's another part I wanted to talk about too. Oh yes, we were talking about this during the Chloe one, and I think it's because of the way that their brains process. But the way that the plus size bodies were described between Chloe and Danny, or I'm sorry, Chloe and Eve, without feeling fetishized, without feeling like gross almost. But
it did it for me.
I loved it so much. I love the way that like it was. I love the jokes about like, you know, like the Jacob reading her shirt and like staring at her chest. Like, I was reading your shirt, and then like
he is so body positive.
He's super
like, of the three. I mean, like they all are, but like
Red really was too.
No, but I mean, like as far as like them loving their own bodies.
Yeah,
I feel like all of them are body positive. I think Danny is to like a probably a higher degree than Chloe. But like Eve is just like if I unbutton my shirt, will that make you feel better?
I think the other thing too is because Jacob's mind is so matter of fact, most likely due to the autism, the fact that he was more focused in describing aspects of her body very matter of factly. But the way, again, it didn't sound weird. It didn't sound like whatnot, but it was like, I just love the way it was, because like having read people try to like describe plus size characters, like I feel like you're fat shaming me when you're having sex,
especially since Talia is not plus size.
I think it was done very, very well.
And I don't know like if she has been in the past. I don't know like that history.
Like, I came across as a surprise to me too, because I thought like she must be based on, but like as somebody who is and as somebody who has been very attracted to women who are, I was like,
I also love the fact that like, because like I'm gonna compare this to Spoiler Alert for a second, which is another one that has like a really good depiction of a plus size heroine and a not plus size partner. But being plus size was such a big part of it. It's the fact of like, I'm insecure because of this. I have all of these worries because of this. It was so great to have people that are confident in their body, know that they're attractive, partners know and love and reciprocate that they're attractive. And the conversation of being fat never came up, and was really nice to read and accept that, because Spoiler Alert has a time and place. It is very, very validating for concerns of dating while plus size, especially like for the sake of that book, like he's a celebrity, so like that it became a bigger deal. But it was just really nice to read about people just like, yeah, I'm hot, what you gonna say about it? Like, yeah, this is nice, what you gonna do about it? And it was just super duper nice to experience that, especially like you said, because she's not plus size, at least to our knowledge, does not currently present as plus size. It was super nice to have that without feeling gross, without feeling fetishized almost, but also
or ignored.
Yeah,
so I think that happens a lot with plus size romance books too, is they just ignore the fact that the heroine is plus size. They might mention it once, but during the actual smutty scenes, they don't. They just like, they forget about it.
Also,
like, this is very obvious that they're plus size, and it's beautiful.
Also, the plus size on the cover, like we just need to like add a little extra like check in that box too. With
Their
like
legs, I know.
No.
like
I love it.
beautiful.
This is like literally the cutest human being on the planet.
Oh my gosh, love. So
You
yeah,
mean
no,
Jacob, right?
No.
I
Okay,
love
because I
Jacob
do.
so much. I love Jacob so much. He is
I
like,
would marry him tomorrow.
He is-
If he would like to trap me in his B&B for the rest of his life, I'm fucking down.
if you would says, I will learn to cook for you, dude. Whatever
will.
you need.
I'll bring Alex.
I will ride you over with my car and then make it up to you by riding your B&B. I got you, man.
Yeah. I'll do the. I can clean toilets really well.
I can be your housekeeper, dude. I will get the duvet.
You can do all of those sheets. Change
I
all
can just clean toilets well. The rest is I can set tables really properly from when I worked in like catering. So,
there you go. There you go.
I can.
Of the love interest, Jacob's most my type, then Red, then Zap. Not that I didn't like Zap, if I had to rate them.
My like rating of the three men is the exact opposite. Because Zap is like my like I will marry Zap.
I love him.
And then it's Red, and then it's Jacob.
Like I said, Red is like the guy that like I would like fantasize over, but I would worry that he wouldn't like me, so I would swipe left. Jacob is like the I have dated you, I can pull you. I think that we will work really well together. And Zaf is the one that like I would admire from a distance. I would be like, oh, you're super cute, but like
glasses. That's not hard.
What?
Anyone can bag a white guy with glasses. I've done it twice. It's really and like me, it's so easy. Just have to be like, you're really handsome. They're done. That's easy.
The fact that I've only been with white guy with
definitely
glasses
be
is
like
a call
my
I did not need. The fact that I've only been with white guy with glasses, that was a call I did not need.
I'm just saying. There are things. I'm just saying.
Thank you for that. I did not need that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But I think for like, I think it'd be like Jacob, Eve, Danny would be who I'd be like attracted to.
We're bringing like the girls.
Oh, now we're gonna bring
it. Why would I ever put Red ahead of any of those women?
Well, I thought we were gonna bring the sisters, love interest, everybody.
I love Zaf. I love Zaf, but he fucked her on a table, and I am a pillow princess. Like absolutely no, you. This shoulder
on a desk.
No,
this shoulder. Okay, but it seemed more gentle.
Yeah, but then when the table broke, he grabbed her and caught her.
I think I would be Zaf's like buddy.
I think that I would work with Zaf at the nonprofit while trying to get with Danny while wanting to be with Jacob and Red.
I just really want to be
Red,
I just want to be in a triad with Zaf and Danny.
I know you do. You know what? I really like Red.
Unicorn for that situation.
I really respect Red. I really do. But the minute he like told her to do something and he was like, "You like that, right?" I was like,
"Nope, I'm done."
I am bossy. I'm like again like pillow princess, like not just about, but like definitely like telling you what to do. I'm not being told what to do.
See, as someone who has a very bold personality, but definitely is kind of like a bratty sub, the fact that like Red had that like side of things, I'm like, go on.
No, but see, it was more for me when Jacob like pulled out the toy. I was like,
the second he pulled it out, I'm like, I am clearing my schedule. This is about to be the best thing I've ever read in my entire life.
yeah.
But I mean, can we talk about the fact that Talia Hibbert basically wrote an alpha male in that one scene that can then flip and be completely beta outside of the bedroom?
Also, I love this because it's very clear that he's only sexually dominant, which is the sign of someone who's actually dominant, not someone who like is using dominance as kind of abuse.
He's confident, yeah.
And I love the fact that I also love like how different all the guys were in bed, because it's really easy to copy and paste leverage when it comes to sex scenes, but all of them were so different in bed, very different techniques.
Except, and this is something Mitchell and I were talking about, they're all fucking like got these monster dicks.
Yeah.
Okay, I literally messaged Mitchell. I was like, is nobody concerned about vaginal tearing? Because I don't remember.
The fact that Eve had a 12-inch dildo, I don't think that she was that concerned about it.
Fair enough.
That's how long it tells you in the book.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was there any mention of lubricant at any point?
There was the glistening head.
There was in Chloe's story.
There wasn't. Okay, because I'm just sitting there like,
Yeah, in the camping scene.
Yeah, in the camping scene there
Okay.
was lube. In Jacob's there was his tongue on the glistening head, and it was kind of implied that like that was all that was needed.
Don't say glistening head. I'm traumatized.
I'm gonna turn the monetization off for this one.
You could say whatever you want. You could say whatever you want about a penis. You could say it's the most beautiful penis in the world, and I'm still like, it still is ugly. Like I don't care.
Honestly,
But it's the same. I'm very bisexual about that because I'm like, they're all ugly. Like the only thing
they are ugly. We have to admit that they are ugly. It's 2021. We can say it out.
Say it, right?
They look gross. They look like naked mole rats, not in the fun way. Like
on the other hand, titties.
Immaculate.
On anyone's body.
Immaculate.
On anyone's body.
Immaculate.
You're
immaculate.
We need to talk about glistening tits more than glistening penises.
I don't think of it as glistening because that is like sweaty. I'm like, ugh.
No. They just came out of the ocean.
Okay, that's fair.
Glistening ocean tits.
Honestly, the only reason I did not mind them like all being monsters is that I'm just used to it from romance. I'm just used to every guy having a massive package. That no longer phases me. Between reading like Sarah J. Maas, between everything else.
You had texted me about that, and I was just like, oh yeah, I guess that is in there.
Like, I didn't even notice that.
I don't even notice it.
I solidly prefer middle of the pack cock.
I think the only reason that like for Jacob, I think it matters is because like Eve's like they made a point to like the dildo's big and he was like, well, I don't have to worry about it because clearly like she enjoys the situation. I feel like that was like one of the few like I didn't think about, but like I guess like I don't even notice like penis size. I'm used to like people like over romanticizing big ones at this point. I'm like,
once you've been traumatized by one big dick, you're like, why am I bleeding? I shouldn't have to be bleeding right now.
There.
And then every time it was just so big and crooked. And
moving on.
I'm not gonna recommend the stream to certain guy friends I know, just that way they don't need to listen to
it. You know what? The next time she goes to the washroom, she's gonna be like, huh. And they never talk about that.
Well, I mean, again,
no, that's not romantic.
That's never
specifically for Eve's, I think it's because she has like a large sex toy, which like the size of it was limited.
Right.
But also, I feel like it wasn't as ridiculous in Eve. Like I didn't feel like Jacob's penis was over romanticized, whereas I feel like with Zaph and Red, it was like, look at these monster cocks, and I was like,
I didn't really feel that way.
See, I guess I really didn't notice that because especially with Danny, like I read so much sports romance.
Yeah, same.
Like all of them have.
Also, like,
which is also unrealistic because let's be honest, if you're playing football, the last thing you want is.
Listen, I've read Sarah J. Maas. I have been numbed to the size of a penis at this point. It's like
I can just feel it. This is why I like the sex toy more than any dick scene in the whole. I can just like, and my body just like, how like when you watch someone else fall, you can sometimes you get like a little shoot of pain. That's what it's like. And I'm like, oh.
Man, I cannot wait to see when you put this for like the timestamp. It's like in-depth penis talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not going to turn the monetization on for this one.
Phallological discussion.
Okay, so let's rank. We've kind of ranked the men. Let's rank the sisters.
Okay.
Wait, like the books or the actual humans?
No, the humans.
I think Chloe's my favorite. Oh, see, here's the thing. I cannot rank them because of where I am in my life. I have different reasons to like all of them. Like,
so which one do we talk about you resonate with Eve the most?
Yeah, I resonate with Eve the most, but a lot of this, like, I'm currently 26. I have a lot of things in common with her. So, like, that one I resonate with, but, like, I also have gone to grad school, so I totally get Danny's struggles. And I also just actively enjoy Chloe. Her character, her book resonated so much, not to the level of Eve's did. So, it's like, picking, like, if I had to rank
we'll do it this way then. Okay, because this was actually a question when I think Talia was doing a Q&A, and someone asked her this. Okay, which sister do you want to be? Which sister do you want to date? And which sister do you want to be best friends with?
Ooh, okay. I want to be Eve. I want to date Danny. I want to be friends with Chloe.
Yeah, me too. Well, no, I want to be Chloe, other than the fibromyalgia part. I want to be with Danny, and I want to be best friends with Eve.
Okay, so just the fact that Chloe,
Although Eve would
there were
probably-
bears in Europe still, that bears hadn't been hunted to extinction still, just says to me, like, no, we have different kinds of knowledge bases here.
That's what I'm saying. Eve would also annoy me.
See,
Danny and I did very similar work, right? Like she studies race and gender and like how those were developed, and I studied how like race constructs were developed in Nigeria. So I feel like I would want to be Danny, and I would date either of them. I would date either Danny or Eve. And I think I'd want to be best friends with Danny too, because when I think of like Eve was like a little all over the place with her friends. It didn't seem like she had very close friends. And then Chloe, like we talked about Chloe's struggles with her friends, and I think that's great. But I think where I'm coming from, Danny does like witchcraft with her best friend in the middle of the night. They're like, let's fucking go do some witch shit together. And I'm like, that's what I want. I want you to be like, right. I don't want to have to go to like coffee and like pretend
also,
to be.
Dating Eve would be so much fun.
So yes. She would be. See, I'm really happy you mentioned the thing with Eve and her friends, because there is a level that I actually super resonated with, and the fact of like I don't have a ton of super duper close friends of like people that like
a lot of her friends at arm's length.
A lot of her friends at arm's length, but also a lot of it is internalized in the fact of her friends keep her at arm's length. She is only called upon when she's needed. Like, hey, I need a task done.
Yeah,
I will now go to Eve
I've
about it. Yeah. And I resonate with that so much, because I have found myself in the situation. Like, I was never like a weirdo outcast in high school, but I was far from the popular kids. I wasn't even invited to my own friends' sleepovers. Like, they would have sleepovers without me. I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me, you assholes, or whatnot situation. And a lot of it was because people knew I was smart. People knew I would help them with stuff. I was a useful person to keep around. But the second I was no longer useful, I got dumped so easily. Yeah. So when Eve was having that conversation, I'm like,
yeah.
I get that.
And I was the oldest in my friend group. So like once my friends started getting their own driver's licenses, it was amazing how I wasn't needed anymore. And they was heading excusely like, oh, well, we thought you would be busy, or oh, we thought you had work or something. But like no one asked. They just like, she's easy to drop, don't worry about it. So it's like that one with Eve, I actually like, I'm like, this is getting a little too real for a fluffy romance novel, but okay.
I get
knows how to do that.
I felt that, but I guess what I'm coming from is like, who would I gravitate towards the most?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like the kind of friendships I have now, where I don't see anybody every day. I don't like go do shit, but like we friggin' all agreed to host like a 12-month readathon together about Marvel characters. Like that's shit Danny would do, because she'd be like, yes, let's do that every month. And
but
like,
also it could be something that Eve would do, because
Chloe
she would like hyperfixate on something.
See, I feel like
that would be a hyperfixation of hers.
Yeah. See, I think the other thing I like about it too is that each of them with like their relations or whatnot, they have really interesting reasons as why they get there. Like Chloe had a small circle because when she got sick, everyone like she felt like she was out, or no one would like understand or listen to her when she's like, I can't do something. They always read it as something else, or they made her feel guilty, or she was just too exhausted, so she pulled away. Danny's like, I'm worried on school and school alone, so I happen to have one friend, and Zaf that's cool with that, so like we'll chill with that for right now. And then Eve is the fact of like, you know, I'm the friend that's useful, and once I'm not useful, I'm not a friend anymore. So I think all of that led to some really, really interesting dynamics.
I'm just thinking like I'm like go swimming in very cold water. Like I pulled out a snake out of a compost bin the other day, like just for fun. You know what I mean? Like Chloe was afraid of bears in a camping park in England. I'd laugh at her. And then that's where I get in trouble, where people are like, oh, but no, like what if this happens? I'm like, don't be stupid. It won't. Your fears are irrational. And then people don't like that when I do that, because it's rude. So yeah, I just don't think Chloe and I would vibe. I really liked her. I just am like definitely but I just think she's like she was afraid camping was a scary prospect for her.
Yeah.
On her bucket list was like leave the country with a backpack, like, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
but I think it definitely goes to show that like she's the oldest of a very posh family.
Yeah.
Like,
no, exactly.
Like that's
I'm
what
just
her
saying,
experience is.
she might find the things I like to do a little overwhelming because I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I'll fucking go to. I took like
let's go do a cross country road
luggage
trip.
to
It's
Ghana,
fine.
and then when she was like travel with a backpack, and then I heard she wanted to go to New York. I was like, that doesn't count. That's not.
I mean, I feel like
she's in
her
England. She's
early
not in
list
America, so it's a little bit more of a flight.
I mean, also like they made a point
But
like
it's
her
New
early
York.
list in the book and her actual list were
Yeah,
different because like she wrote a list based off of what other people thought that she should do, so she kind of adopted those versus like what she actually wanted to do. So I mean, give her a little bit of credit on that.
Easily survive. Like the thought of like going to a metropolitan city with a backpack. That's not hard. That's not backpacking, dude. You're going to one place and you're never leaving that place. Backpacking is like moving around.
Right.
I'm just saying. Chloe and I would have different hobbies.
Right.
I
So
feel like Chloe would be fun to
book-wise, like as far as like favorite books, I know Christine, like this Eve was the only one you gave 5 stars to. So like obviously that's your favorite.
Yep.
But then what?
Okay, so this is tough. I've thought about this a lot because I think that if I had read Danny before Chloe, I might like it more. But I found
or if they were more spaced out.
Or yeah, true. Because I did read all 3 back to back within the span of a few days, I found Chloe and Danny almost too similar.
That's fair.
Like I felt like Eve had a different emotional structure than the other two, where it was like Chloe and Danny like both being afraid to get attached to someone, and then they do, and then my other thing about Danny, and this is gonna be controversial.
Okay.
Because I do love Danny and Zaph a lot, and again, like Danny is probably the one I would choose for all 3 of those things. She wasn't wrong. Her reasons for not wanting to be in a romantic relationship were like actually logical. They weren't just like a whiny girl who's been hurt before and she's like, fuck it, nobody loves me, I'm done. Right? Hers were like romance, like the romantic relationships, they're kind of structured on a system that doesn't work for me, and like I'm doing all this research and it doesn't really make any sense, and I shouldn't have to like conform to this specific like format of love. And then I really appreciate that Zaph was like, I'm not going to try to change her. Right. I really appreciate that.
I think that was it. I don't think Danny was wrong, but I think that she was incomplete in that, in her assumption of what a romance is.
I would have loved if they had come to a solution that wasn't heteronormative monogamy.
Yeah.
Like, I would have loved if they ended up in some kind of different relationship dynamic for her.
Okay, I'm happy that you said that because Danny is my least favorite, and I'm saying that from like a 5, a 4.5. Like we're splitting.
They're all
fantastic.
But I don't think that it in like the nice thing about Talia Hibbert's books in general, not just like not me trying to like argue that Danny's the best. Yeah. But like it's not ended because none of them are married.
True. No,
there's never a wedding.
I thought Eve's epilogue it was in-law, so I thought it was implied that the marriage had happened.
I mean,
it could,
but I also I also call them in-laws even though I'm not married.
Eve's ended with like Jacob being like, if I did,
right?
But that's what I'm saying. Like they are just like I read it as like them just being like long-term partners. Yeah.
And obviously also like Jacob read super monogamous for me. So when I read that, I was like, that makes sense. But Danny read as someone that would be more like relationship anarchy poly.
I can totally see her be poly. I can totally see Danny poly.
And so I like, to me as someone who like where that representation is really important for me because like that's always the solution is fix the person that doesn't believe in traditional romance. And I was like, she didn't quite like fix her. Like Zaph was never like, you're wrong. And he never tried to change her mind. Like she naturally came to that, which I appreciate because
I love the fact that in the epilogue of Danny's, he was like, wait, no, my girlfriend doesn't like anniversaries.
That was funny. I did like that. I also like her like little. This is a total like random one, but I love the fact that she's going through. It's like here's how we're gonna celebrate. Maybe anal. It's a holiday. It's a special occasion. I love the way she said that.
But I would love it if there ever is like we ever get to see more of them, that it would be something like, well, you know, like just something that to show me that Danny didn't end up brainwashed. But like I just like,
I think I was
you guys are wrong. So but, like,
I was talking to Brianna about this last week when we were talking about the third act breakup between Chloe and Danny, and now we can throw Eve into this. And I think this is where my rating is. Eve, I think I like the most just because I resonate with so much of it. I thought it was objectively the funniest. It was
so the funniest.
It was from start to finish the most enjoyable to read the entire time through. My only issue with it was the third act breakup, and for reasons we've already discussed. For Danny, because it has, I know you mentioned it has a similar tone. I felt like it had a different tone. The fact of Chloe and Eve feel like rom-coms. Danny feels like a contemporary book with a romance on the side, and that might just be because of the whole fake Danny trope thing. I don't know for
it's
sure.
It's a lot about self-discovery,
but
for both
exactly.
of the characters.
However, my only issue with this, and again, I was telling Brandon and I mentioned this last week when we were talking, is the fact of Red and Jacob and their breakups were very almost instantaneous solution oriented, when Zaf and Danny went the exact opposite direction. I get in text, in universe, why that makes sense. Zaf is like, she needs time to process. I don't want to do it. And then Danny's like, I want to talk to him in person. And then Zaf is just not there. And I totally get the fact that, like, because it was 4 days, the idea of like someone calling or texting, trying to reach out when someone's like, give them space, and someone's like, nod, and I want to have this in person. I totally get the logic behind it. I just feel like there was one more step of communication that needed to be done before go to his knees, set up a grand gesture behind his back. I feel like there was like one step missing. I don't know how you could have done it, but I think
like this is the only time where dual POV actually hurt the book.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you only had Danny's POV and you're waiting for him to reach out, but we also know that Zaf was waiting for Danny.
Yeah,
it just became a little bit more frustrating, and I think that because I was unable to get past that, the way like for the Jacob one, Jacob and Chloe's third act breakup was less than a day. It was so fast. There was so little time that went by.
There wasn't a grand gesture. They both just were going to go see each other. And I don't like grand gestures, right? Because I am fucking like Danny in that way. So to me, I was like, okay, Red's is like pretty cute. Like the
Red's was cute, and Red's was also like, you don't want to see me. This is me proving to you I am not going anywhere. So you
if someone did to me what Danny did to Zaf, I'd kill myself on the spot. Like
I would panic.
But it shows that that's like Danny knew Zaf. Because that's what Zaf wanted.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's what Zaf saw as romance.
I think one thing that also kind of bugs me about the Zaf Danny one, and this might just be me like trying to like articulate a reason and borderline nitpicking, is the fact of the reason they had their issue is that Zaf moved too fast for Danny's comfort. And so the solution to that was for Danny to go in the exact 180 and grand gesture. And for me, I feel like that feels slightly off for the tone of the story. Like Danny, so not this, not this, not this. And yet the way that the relationship is salvaged is her doing something so outside her comfort zone, even to the point that like he mentioned that her wanting to celebrate their anniversary was so out of character for her. And yet she did this big grand gesture. Again, objectively, the scene was super cute. I love that their relationship got back together. I feel like for them, realistically, though, it would have been they met at his apartment, they talked, they realized they were on the same page, and then it went from there. Like I get it's a book, so like
it felt very the early 2000s like romance movies.
Yeah, and
like, it felt very very Heath Ledger singing on the
To me, the most romantic one is them running into each other on their way to like we were both dumb. Like
that was so funny. I love that, and it was also I had a level of realism to it. It was like I noticed the fact that Jacob's like, get your hands off her. Right? I was like, is this the guy? Okay, cool. Go ahead. Like that was.
And then there's like no like like he fought harder or she fought harder. It was just freaking like we both realized we were really dumb.
Can we not be dumb anymore? Okay,
can we just like get back together?
I feel like that's why Danny just like didn't work for me as much. Not saying it was bad, and people that like that probably really like that. For me, it just felt In this series, it felt so weird.
Right.
Also, can I just say the one thing about Danny's book that will be relatable to the end of time is meeting a scholar that you really respect and being like,
right?
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. My friend is currently finishing up her PhD, and I got to hang out with her over the holiday weekend. And after freshly reading Danny, and I'm like, I understand that.
I
right
understand
now.
this now. Yeah, absolutely. See, so for me, like, I mean, everybody knows that Danny's my favorite book. Like,
Oh, yeah.
That's just me. But it's just because I resonate so much with Danny and like past relationships and like, you know, having that past trauma and then realizing that Zaf was so different.
Yeah.
And being like, wait, like you're not gonna get mad at me for working late or you know whatever. I think that's just me. That's, you know, and I think that's why I resonated with that so much. And that's one of the cool things about these books is that like everybody's going to find themselves in one of more of that book, which is why I think a lot of people are resonating with Eve's book.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I feel like after that one came out, I feel like a lot of people said that Eve was their favorite.
I also think that there's just as equal, because I mean I know that like the female lead's name is in the title, right? But it is dual POV, and the men have like amazingly well fleshed out backstories. Yeah. I think for me, like I resonated the most with Jacob and then Danny, like out of everyone. So it just was like.
Whereas my top two people that I resonated with would have been Danny, Zaf, and then Chloe would have been my third.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that like there's not just 3 opportunities to really resonate. There's 6 opportunities to just really fucking feel seen.
Right.
I feel like Talia Hibbert really excelled herself with the dual POV because I have read other romances that tried to do a dual POV, and one chapter always felt unnecessarily supplemental, or like it's only here to justify action later on. But these ones not only felt really good, but was also really interesting. First of all, to know what the love interests were thinking, because some of those internal monologues were absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
But then also to get a really interesting perspective of how these characters are perceived, because when you're in someone's head, especially someone like Chloe or Eve, how they perceive the world and how other people perceive them are so different. Yeah. So it was really great to have that. And then as we got to like deeper parts, and we kind of mentioned this before, with like when we're going to the backstories, when we're going to the emotional like maturity of these people, it was really great to have that, not from Eve looking at Jacob and deciding that Jacob had this, or no, Chloe going to Red and deciding that Red had this, but like Red having a conversation without Chloe there, and like that worked so well. Or having like Zaf's perspectives, or especially with his anxiety, and like you hear like the spiraling thoughts or whatnot, like Danny would not have been able to pick up on some of that, especially early on. So having that,
think of how like people already say that Jacob's rude. I can't think of one time he was rude, Margaret. Okay. But I like if you didn't have his perspective, you'd be like,
he would have been the worst. You would have been like, how can anyone like this guy?
But him sitting there being like, point for them because of this, point off because of, I was like, yeah, same.
No, and also the fact that like you have him like oh crap, now it looks like I'm like just staring at her tits, like when he was like reading her shirt, like, and that's like a running joke for everyone else. Is like, I was reading the shirt.
Or the way he like fixates on certain social rules and stuff. Like, well, she didn't have the fucking resume. She wasn't prepared.
Right.
Like I was sitting there agreeing with him the whole time, being like, yes.
No,
obviously.
When you first started Eve's book, I think you actually texted me being like, I'm gonna hate Eve. And I'm like, no, you're not. Yeah. No, you're not.
I know.
Because it was like after that first scene where you're just like, Eve's a mess.
Because like if someone showed up to my business without a resume, I'd be like,
no.
Are you stupid?
All the books benefited by having a love interest POV. Eve's needed a love interest POV.
100%.
Like, I don't think you would have believed the relationship. I don't think that people would have rooted for Jacob, especially because if all you have is an Eve POV with Jacob throwing out a offhanded, sorry, the autism, and then nothing else from his POV. it would have felt like I apologize in advance for making this comparison, but the way that people like thought that the Big Bang Theory Sheldon Cooper was autistic, even though it was not a great representation, it was him mostly just being a dick for no reason.
Right.
And the people later ascribed it to autism. They never confirmed that that's what it was supposed to be. There was no.
Well, I think if we wouldn't have gotten Jacob's POV, then his autism rep would have felt more check off the box for diversity.
Exactly.
I really also too, like when he's doing that like pros and cons of her in the interview, which by the way just like really fucking was a great scene. When he's like, I'm autistic or whatever he said, and she said, oh, okay, and like didn't ask many questions, and he was like, oh,
she's moved along,
didn't say anything. And that like him like being like, who, like automatically being like, oh, she doesn't think anything of
that part was so good,
so powerful, and you would have missed it if you just had Eve.
Exactly. And then there was another scene later. No, the scene like when Eve defended him, when he didn't have to prompt it. He was like, I'm used to these type of jokes. So he was just kind of grin and bear. And Eve, because that whole chapter was a Jacob POV, when Eve's like coming in, and he was just like shocked that like unprompted. It's not his only like really good friend that's doing this. That scene was so good. And then also when he was like talking about like his like when he was talking about Eve's family and how much he liked it compared to like his really negative familial experience.
His family needs to be burnt at the stake.
His family's the worst.
That's the only one where I didn't like the love interest family, because I love Red's family and I love Zaph's family.
Zaph's family fucking was the coolest.
Zaph's family is fantastic. The person who ended up raising Jacob and his aunt was great.
And Mont, his best friend. Like
Mont, I love all the guy friends too. This is one of the few books where like the guys' friends, like Bromance Book Club notwithstanding, because like the whole like spin-off thing is like the book club and the friends and whatnot. So like, we're supposed to like them, but for this one, for people that were there to help the love interest progress in their storyline, every single one of them had such a fantastic group of people around them, and I'm like, you guys are the best humans.
I was so worried there'd be a conflict between Zaph and Jamal for like Jamal wanting to date his sister-in-law, and I really loved.
I think it would have been easy to do that.
So easy. It would have been a page filler. Yeah, but just to be like, dude, I'm happy for you. Like, you're the best guy I know, and I love her so much. Like, I'm happy.
Especially the fact that it was like, after the death of the brother that so clearly affects him, it could have easily had like led into a conflict. I'm so happy that they didn't. I'm happy that it's
like how protective he was of his niece, that he was like, I trust you with like that family.
That part was so good. I loved every second of it.
Yeah, because obviously they're still so close. Like, I love that the mother and Kieran worked together, and like there was that family was so tight knit, and they were all so lovely about just like bringing Jamal into it. Like, it was just right. And that to me, I was like, this is beautiful and emotional, and I love it.
When it came to Jacob and Mont, I really appreciated how Mont had this level of protectiveness for Jacob without like almost like impeding on Jacob's ability to form his own connections. Like when it came to Eve, I was like, don't you dare ruin this for him. When him and Eve started dating, it's like, listen, I'm happy for you guys, but if you hurt him,
right,
I'll hit you with my car.
So right. So for those of you guys in the comments, or if anybody has read these three now for the first time, Becky and Christine, what would you recommend a reader go to next? Because we've talked about how there's definitely like Talia's God tier, and then if you read something that's really bad after, it's really bad.
Okay.
So what author and or book would you recommend someone go to next if they want kind of the same thing?
I think
I read so much romance.
I think if you prefer Chloe over Danny, you should read the Bromance Book Club, especially because of how the relationships in that one worked, how the tight-knit group and whatnot. I feel like very similar kind of like lovey-dovey vibes without like totally having it. If you liked Danny over Chloe, something either like Spoiler Alert or Casey McQuiston.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then saying Margaret's Helen Huang, and I think
yes, if you liked Eve, definitely Helen Huang.
I haven't. That's what I'm reading next, so I will confirm next week if that was an accurate assessment or not.
Oh yeah. I think that if you like, especially if you like Danny, Alicia Rye's books.
Right? Alicia Rye.
Alexa Martin does a really good sports romance.
I think I'm like trying to look at like my romance novels.
I'm literally going through my read list because I read so little romance. I think so little.
I feel like we made the comparison enough. We had to throw Evelyn Hugo in there just because like the familial dynamics and some of the other dynamics in there. I think Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah,
it's a very different.
Rising. If you want the sibling bond, Malibu Rising has a great sibling bond.
Yeah. So Taylor Jenkins Reid, I guess. And if you're looking for the level of smut, go to Katie Robert next. If you're just looking for smut,
I would. If you were at all interested in like non-traditional kind of romance models, like if the Danny thing maybe like interested you, but then it wasn't really followed through, like Brianna and I can really vouch for In the Ravenous Dark.
Okay.
By A.M. Strickland.
I think that kind of along that line, either Nikki Sloan or Sierra Simone probably. Then too.
But don't read the second book in Sierra Simone's
I heard it wasn't great.
Camelot trilogy because it is god awful. American Queen, so good. American Prince, very rapey.
I was also thinking of
like they role play a rape scene that she already went through as a rape scene.
I think Lesson in Thorns for Sierra Simone, if you're looking for more poly vibes. Like Lesson in Thorns. I know that's a quartet. I know people didn't like the second book of it, but I hear good things about the first book. If you wanted Danny to end in a poly situation, probably go to Lesson in Thorns next. Because it's dark academia, bisexual poly. So that feels like if you need Danny to have a different ending, there you go. Margaret, I will send you thoughts for Kiss Question. I literally just downloaded on Hoopla earlier today.
I don't have many romance recommendations. I like Beach Read by Emily Henry.
I guess Emily Henry would be a good one.
Yeah, those are just like quality.
It would be a good one with like if you really resonated with like self-discovery type.
I think this more Chloe's story. Yeah. But in general, it's just I just
really read the fluffy romance.
I don't know what to tell you. It's not my genre.
All right. Well, is there anything else that we want to talk about before I announce the next part?
Go ahead.
So Taliathon is going to continue. We're going to take a break for a couple months, but in October, we're going to be reading Mating the Huntress, which is her paranormal.
I'm so excited.
It sounds like some werewolf fight. It sounds like people are going to get bit.
It might. I don't know. I have no idea what it is. But I know it's Halloween centric. So
do you know how long it took me to figure out in romance novels with werewolves that marking your mate wasn't peeing on them? That's what dogs do. I was like, they pee on things. And
I mean,
they never said.
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
they were like, you can smell it when they're marked. I was like, he pees on her.
Yeah, I know yuck the yubs of other people, but piss kinks are not my thing, so I'm happy that's not the case.
I really great. Now you've ruined paranormal romance for me.
I'm just saying, if anyone gets peed on, I'm gonna talk about it a lot.
That'll be the entire chat.
I don't have exact dates for it yet because we're trying to work around other readathons. But that's gonna happen in October. And then Mary Inkmas is going to happen in December.
Mary Inkmas has literally been on my TBR for like 3
years
now.
I didn't even realize it was a Talia Hibbert book.
I'm so excited to finally get it off, to finally read it. Oh, it looks so good, especially after reading.
It's a like tattooed rich dude and a coffee shop barista.
How much Christmas is there in it though?
It's called Mary Inkmas, and most people read it around the holidays, so I'm assuming some, but not like.
But it's like Talia Hibbert, so it's gonna be smutty.
I hate holidays.
But these are also her indie published ones.
Yeah.
So like if you thought Brown Sisters were smutty, these are going to be
sexy.
You know what the thing is for me though is that like the whole book could be smut. It's just like the kind of smut because I am so specific in what I like. So it's like
Says the person who literally reads and reviews Harry Potter smut.
Not because I want to
Dragon
not
smut.
I'm sitting there being like, yes, this dinosaur porn is really hot. I'm like, this is funny.
I have to say something about
Spoilers, you read it all.
I'm gonna make sure we're not live
Just
before I
make
say
sure
the
that
comment
you're-
that just reminded me.
Make sure that you read this after you read one of your dinosaur porns.
You're right. No, it was like, but like in the Ravenous Dark, I had to like pull over my car at one point because I was like, whoo!
That's on my TBR, and I'm so excited to read
so
it. That
good.
one's on my TBR, and it sounds so
It's
good.
I think you'll really like it.
But anyway, stay tuned. We're gonna do that in October and December, and then we will do. It doesn't have a title yet, but it's Skybriar #1, and I'm 90% certain that it is Mont's story. It comes out in 2022.
Sold.
Number one.
Skybriar #1.
I'm just saying, there's 3 siblings there too.
Right.
There are 3 siblings there too.
Yeah. So it'll probably be a trilogy.
I'm pumped.
Well, most of her stuff has been trilogies in the past.
I'm so pumped.
She's good at writing trilogies that don't feel where the middle book doesn't like feel like a middle book.
Yeah.
Also, these are spin-offs that don't lessen because of the characters, and the cameos from the other characters don't feel like they're trying to steal the show or set up future.
You could read them out of order, and it would be okay as
You
long as you
read
don't
them out of order. Like, I love Bromance Book Club, don't get me wrong, but you can always tell who is being set up for a future story because, like, especially at the end of Crazy Stupid Romance, like,
that's the exact same thing.
Like, they set up the Russian story so obviously in the epilogue that, like, okay, if I didn't know this was coming, it's like, oh, I wonder who it is. This one, yeah, I figured each of the sisters were going to do something, but, like,
I'm gonna write a romance trilogy where it's so disconnected. There's gonna be like the 2 characters, and then in one scene, one of them's gonna like bump shoulders with somebody in like a subway tunnel, and that's who the next book's about. That's what I'm gonna do. Like,
well, that's how like all these other
orange beanie.
What the Marvel are you doing, Christine?
Right, there you go. All right. So, anyways, we've been talking for like almost 2 hours now.
Yeah, we have to.
So,
Saturday night, baby.
I haven't made dinner yet.
You always do this. You're like, it's 10 p.m. and I gotta eat.
Well, it's not even 8 for me.
Yeah,
that's still late for dinner.
It is late, but like 6 was too early.
What are we European?
Huh?
Are we European?
Well, I mean, it's Saturday night. It's Saturday night at the end of my vacation.
Yeah.
Dude, getting up at 5 o'clock on Monday is going to be hell.
Monday's so sorry for your loss. I'm not looking forward to it.
It's gonna be bad. But anyway, thank you guys all for joining this.
Thank you, everyone.
I do have a habit of
replay.
telling people, "Hey, I'm gonna do this crazy thing," and then people join me.
It's fine. We keep having crazy
Marvel, Veda, Talia.
I'm so worried for Veda, man.
I already told Brian I'm not playing daily. I'm just gonna have an actual upload schedule. That's the most we're getting from me this time. I can't do it.
So, anyways, thank you for joining. Also, you should go and check out Christine's review on the Brown Sisters.
I have to watch. I'm so excited.
Yes,
I talk about penises a good amount.
It's true.
You'd be like, this 30 minutes of this chat wasn't enough.
This was before this chat, so I hadn't gotten it off my chest yet.
I will add the links down below. They're not up right now, but I will add them. So thank you all, and